That's one side of the devil. Right. But then what pervades him is what? Science. And within science, you have that brand new concept.
Secular materialism.
So it's like secular materialism. Everything is relative. See, and you have the whole concept of the idea that there's no pattern and there's no purpose. See, so you can see
no divine intelligence behind any event that happens.
Exactly. So you begin to see then what we're looking at. So then this whole thought has to be eventually what? Overturned. Being part of the prevailing thought of Mr. Babylon as the idols in Egypt was what? Destroyed. And I'll come back to this later as we begin to investigate that. So it says now repenting. The last paragraph there.
Okay. In plain, simple language?
In the final chapter.
Oh, sorry. Now, Mystery Babylon.
In the final chapter.
In the final chapter of the Bible, Elohim states the purpose of Mystery Babylon the Great. As the Apostle John said, Babylon has fallen. It is in the process of collapsing financially and economically, creating havoc and chaos. People fear something is about to transpire, not knowing what or how to prepare as the ominous signs continue to occur.
Okay, so those are the people that did not hear the what? The voice. They're not going to be taken.
That's right.
So saying, okay, read.
Okay. Now, Mystery Babylon holds many of the true sons and daughters captive, as occurred with Israel in Egypt with Pharaoh.
And also with Israel under the idolatry that they had there of Ezekiel. Okay, read on.
Thus, the final theophany will take place to render the punishment to Mystery Babylon, as in Egypt with Moses and Aaron, and set the stage for the new heaven and earth. Note that the Killing's vision occurred during the Depression of the 1930s.
Okay, so that's how we end this, showing forth that these things constantly repeat themselves, and Ezekiel's vision is nothing more than a manifestation of what Moses saw, and basically John saw. Those three put together constitutes the purpose of Yahweh, enabling you to understand the angelic forms and the tabernacle pattern and its various manifestations, and how things are structured in heaven, and how the things in the earth plane are reflective of things where? In the heavens, or in the spirit realm. Are there any questions? I just did a short presentation. I wanted to be concise. And
I just got one comment about the physical body, because so many people in academia are atheists. And they'll say, I don't believe in God. And they're sitting there in front of you with their heart beating 70 beats a minute. And they're breathing in and and expelling the carbon dioxide, and their bodies are digesting their food. And, their body's a witness to the Creator. And then they're telling you, I don't, but like this guy, he had an incident in his life that he couldn't reconcile. And many things happen to us in life that take a long time to understand why they happened, and what the meaning is. And so he couldn't. Here he is. It takes forever to find somebody that you really like. He got a wife. Had a beautiful son. Having a good time in their life, and all of a sudden she's burned up in the fire. And he's like, doggone, what's this all about? I thought we were going to, grow old together and, have grandkids and, he got grandkids. But anyway, his whole paradigm of, being happy and being in love got shattered. And so at that point, he began to question, is God, he was already in materialistic world. It didn't take much. Is God real? Should I even... As things just happen, what's the meaning? And so because people don't understand the basic fundamentals that we teach in this school, your physical body's a witness, there's a pattern, things repeat themselves. Elohim has appeared to man throughout the ages, then they really become all confused and depressed. And that's the ones, when we talk about, Davita's going to go through something with the signs of the time and the end. But we have to interact with these people who don't know, what's going on, and they're looking at you like, well, why are you so calm? So this is what we're trying to do during these sessions is give you some ammunition so that when you go out to the world, you'll have something quickly to say. Right. I mean, I remember we were listening to something on the Coast to Coast, which comes on at midnight, and this guy named Charles Tart, who had always followed parapsychology, and he wrote the classic book on altered states of consciousness. And so, he's a PhD and he's got, these books written. And then the guy asked him, he said, well, how do educated people, respond to you? You writing these books, and he says, well, I really keep the psychological, the side part, he calls it ESP, telepathy, that separate from altered states of consciousness like dream state. You can get a meditative state. Take drugs and get to a. He keeps that separate from the psi. He calls it psi, PSI, but it's psychic. The psychic state, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, moving things with your mind, telekinesis. Because he says, I don't want to uselessly rouse people's prejudices. And he knows that in the academic world, when you start mentioning psychic stuff, everybody's antenna goes up, and either you get to well, let's not promote him because we don't want him teaching our kids, or you get fired. So he's trying to keep his job and keep an income, so he just separates the two. And even in his teaching, you learn to be wise as a serpent and what is peaceful as a dove, because sometimes you go to people and you just tell them something simple like, the name is Yahweh, and they all up in an arms, and it's like, okay, well, let's just talk about the principle. He who creates everything that's created, I will be what I will to be. Let's take something simple, and deal with that. And then once you get them paid, there's a crow, then the name, at some point you can bring it in, but you don't. Sometimes when you uselessly rouse people's prejudices, you don't get anywhere.
Right, sure don't.
Their antenna goes up, and they're like, I'm not going to talk to you because you're a so and so nut. You're a whatever kind of.
You're a double.
Right, right. Whatever they're going to put in yours. Right. so this guy, we were listening to him, and it's just, amazing how our, like you said, technologically advanced, and we have all these, the internet. We have all these things that help us, move along, and people are stuck in materialism. And see, at this time when things get bad, as Davita's going to go out in her Signs of the Times, you need all the powers that belong to human beings. Your five senses plus the ESP and the telepathy and anything else that you got that Yahweh gave you, you're going to need it to get through these last times. So this is what we're trying to, prepare you and get you to see that something as simple as Elohim appearing to man, which will totally destroy randomness. How many people understand that? He said us in the room. A few other people, people that go to church, they have a better understanding, but it's limited. They get it so far, and then they cut it off.
Right.
So anyway, that was my one comment.
I have something to add about those angels and the censer and what's going on with all of that. Is, as you know, everyone knows the incense in the tabernacle was offered up as a sweet savor to cover the stench of the court round about. So another way, as you know, that represents covering the stench represents covering the stench of the carnal mind.
Right.
Carnal, that's what's being burnt upon the altar continually. Is our own carnality and that which we have to get rid of. So the incense represents the righteous purification, if you will, of those odoriferous thoughts. Do you know what I'm saying? Your carnal thoughts stink to Yahweh. Just like your poop in the toilet. We all need something, spray, Glade, or some natural substance to make that, endurable to go in the bathroom after. So what I was also going to say is that you notice when Lee was reading that, the high priest, the altar, there was a couple things going on. You had the incense actually being burned on the coals on the altar. Okay? You had that. That's like that was a perpetual burning. You understand what I'm saying? So you got the air in your lungs. What is that? Perpetual burning. If that cuts off, you got issues. Major issues. Then he also had to take coals off of the altar, put them in a censer, and put the incense on that, and then walk through the tabernacle. Well, he couldn't go in the most holy place, except at designated time. That's the principle. Why? Why does he have to do that? Because the incense representing the oxygen has to circulate throughout the body. So you got the continual burning of your breathing, but you also have that process manifest, and he also had to take it and circulate it. So I'm saying it's just marvelous how you see Yahweh. What's laid down in the tabernacle, you have to have that functionality within you.
you know what that scripture is? Because
What I just said? I was just
the one
paraphrasing.
about the altar, the coals.
Goes off the altar and put them in a censer. We can look at